Dan, hey, congratulations on your new film, Spider and Jessie.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Gabe. Thank you very much.
And you know what? Not a problem. It's a delightful drama that in several ways is very, very touching. But more congratulations is being showcased at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. How do you feel about that?
Very, very excited. I've lived in Los Angeles for the last almost, oh gosh, 20 years already. And so Santa Barbara Film Festival has always been something that is well known in the industry as a great showcase for independent film. So the opportunity to world premiere there is really just a dream come true. I couldn't be more excited.
I can't be more happy for you. So let's ask that obligatory
Thank you.
question about
Sure.
your film is where the idea came from for Spider and Jesse.
Well, I have been very interested in a while, many years, in the collateral damage caused by drug addiction in families. A topic that's often explored when you're dealing with drug addiction is often in cinema, in stories, even in newspaper articles, magazine articles. You're often more often than not you're looking at the perspective of the addict, which is very important. Those stories are crucial to be told, for the public to understand an addict's point of view. Um, but I wanted to do something a little different here. I really, like I said, I was interested in what's left behind in the addict's wake. What are those stories? Because my family, like thousands and thousands and thousands of other families, have been touched by addiction. So what does that look like for a family of an addict? If your best friend is an addict, if whomever, somebody you care for is an addict, what is that? How does that shape your life? And being interested in that topic, I happened to come across an article a few years ago about opioid orphans, and a light bulb just went off because it was something that, sure, if you think about it, it makes sense. You have this horrific epidemic of drug addiction. Well, certainly there are going to be many, many kids whose parents have either passed away from addiction or are unable to care for their child. Um, it makes sense that there'd be an epidemic of opioid orphans. But it wasn't something that I had heard much about before. It wasn't something that people were talking about when they talk about addiction, and I felt that that is a story that I would like to try to tell. So what I did was I was friends with a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, this woman, Julia Keller, who still does lived in Ohio, lives in Ohio, and uh, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. That belt there is certainly was one of the areas particularly hard hit by the opioid crisis. And so I called Julia after reading this article and thinking about what a movie might be, and I said, "Hey, would you at all be interested in helping me research this movie? Would you could you reach out to folks in that Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky area where she lived, who might be able to share their stories?" And she, to my delight, was on board from the very beginning, and she set up dozens of interviews in Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio. So I flew out to Ohio, and she and I went on this road trip, meeting folks from who've been impacted by addiction from all sides. We did ride-alongs with sheriffs whose communities were hard hit by addiction. We met addicts, their families. We did a visit with this particular family. It was three sisters, all under the age of 12, whose father was incarcerated and whose mother died from addiction within the last 6 months, and they were living with their grandma. And I got to hang out with these girls, these incredible girls, for about, I don't know, about 5, 6 hours, and just getting to really just be in their presence really inspired these characters of Spider and Jessie for me. Um, and after the experience of doing this research, um, we went back to Julia's house in Ohio, and we just kind of in 4 days outlined sketched out the entire movie.
Hmm.
Um, and then I went back to LA and began working on the script.
Now, the other part, which is also the backbone of your film, is the motivation about the fear of CPS and family separations.
Yes.
Can you talk about that because that was the pure motivation of us, the Spider character in this entire film from start to end.
Yes. Well, one of the facets of all of this, again, something that I don't think people really understand or realize is because you've had this epidemic of drug addiction affecting so many parents, you have an overburdened foster care system that it's very challenging for them to account for all these kids that are losing their parents, again, whether it's to actual overdose or just their inability to care for their kids. And because the system is overburdened, siblings can be frequently separated when they're put into the system. And so Spider and Jessie, they live in a community. It's an unnamed community, but they live in a town where there is rampant addiction, and they particularly Spider, the older sister, understands that when they discover that mom is dead from an overdose, that it is a very strong possibility that they would go into the system and be separated. And Spider will stop at nothing to prevent that from happening. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so true, so true in this case. What Tell us about the challenges of writing the two sisters characters. In particularly, you introduced a mother, but her presence is known throughout the entire movie, but she's actually not there.
Right, right. Well, I guess in a sense that's two good questions. I'll start with the mothers. So one of the things that was very important to me in telling the story was not to demonize the addict. In fact, to try to show the addict's humanity, even though the addict in this story is not in the movie in a sense. She passes, she's dead in the first scene. Um, but her presence, like you said, is felt throughout the film as the two sisters try to reconcile who she was and how they related to her specifically. Spider, the older sister, it's very very complicated, her feelings about her mother, because she blames her mother, who because of her mother's addiction was was in many ways unable to care for them. Jessie, the younger sister, still idolized her mother. It was still her mother. She loved her deeply and was much more forgiving of her faults. And I kind of wanted to show both sides of that through these two sisters' differing perspectives. Um, and again, I also really wanted to humanize the mother, despite the fact that she was an addict, and despite the fact that being an addict meant that she had a lot of challenges when it came to parenting. Despite all of that, she was still their mother and still loved them very much, even though she had this disease of addiction. Um, and therefore it affected her parenting. So that was sort of the thinking behind how I handled the mother as a character throughout the piece, even though, as you mentioned, she's not there. She's passed away. Um, Now, the first part of your question was dealt with
The
specifically
sisters.
the sisters. Um, can you remind me though specifically
I was
what you were
talking about
inquiring
the
about?
development of the character development of the sisters, through their journeys. Yeah.
Well, that a lot of their development and a lot of the way I thought about those characters was inspired by folks that I met on my in my research trip, particularly those three girls. Just talking to those girls. Another thing that we did on this research trip is we did a roundtable with social workers who specifically work with children who are coming from homes where one or both parents are addicts, and hearing all the stories from social workers about what they see when they go into these homes and work with these families. Uh, all of that, I was able to synthesize all of that information and research into those two characters as I was developing them, because for me the key to all of it was that it had to feel real and believable. So many of the details that you see in the movie came from things that were told to me by those girls, for example, or by social workers, or by the sheriffs we did ride-alongs with. All the details are really what's most important in a sense, even the small details, because those details are what, in my opinion, makes something ring true, feel authentic. And so I was just sort of synthesizing all of this research as I was crafting the sisters and their arc and their journey throughout the story.
Now, in order for a film like this, especially for a drama to work, it is all comes down to casting. And you landed with two excellent young ladies with McKenna and JoJo. And McKenna to a lot of us is much more of a household name than
Sure.
JoJo. So tell us about casting these two great actresses for yourself.
Yeah, from the development stage of this, um, my my producing partner on this, Dan Sema, he and I would often talk about it all comes down to who's going to play these girls. These girls are going to make or break this movie. It was clear to me I could be the best director in the world, I could be the worst director in the world. If I was able to cast the right two girls, I don't want to say it wouldn't matter. Of course, it would matter. The film would, the better I do as a director, the better the film's going to be. The worse I do as a director, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
However, the mantra was if we do a good job, not a good job, a great job casting these two girls, the movie will work. That was just that over everything else. That was paramount. These two girls. And it was interesting as we started the journey. Even folks in my camp, like my agents, managers, people that I work with in the business, they're like, gosh, they're very supportive of the script, but they're like, God, where are you going to find a 10-year-old girl who the Jessie character is 10. Where are you going to find a 10-year-old girl to play some of this stuff? It's really, really tough, dramatic stuff. And I just said, I believe that there'll be someone out there that can do it. I was a little less worried about Spider, only because she's older, so therefore
Mhm.
the actor playing her would have a bit more life experience. But not to take anything away, it was essential that be cast perfectly as well. But it quickly became apparent that the tougher thing to find might be the 10-year-old. So specifically with JoJo, who plays Jessie, the 10-year-old, we saw in casting, our casting director, Jessica Kelly, would send us hundreds of tapes. So these young actresses would put themselves on tape, and most of them were not right, for various reasons. But one tape, just out of this pile, just as soon as I started watching it, it popped, and that was JoJo's audition tape. I mean, honestly, in the first 5 seconds, I just felt, oh, intuitively, there's something special about this young lady. And we did a Zoom callback, because JoJo lives in Texas, I live in LA. We did a Zoom callback, where I directed her through 4 scenes, while her father read the other parts off camera, and she was phenomenal. I was teary-eyed watching it, and I left that. I hadn't even met her in person. I left that Zoom knowing, oh my gosh, we found our Jessie. Um, and it was a real search to get to JoJo. Like I said, we looked at many young actresses for that part. Uh, for McKenna, we got lucky. Um, McKenna Grace is, in my opinion, one of the best actors of her generation. Um, and it's funny when you're making a list of actresses that we were interested in to potentially play Spider, McKenna was at the top of the list. But when we inquired about her availability, we were told she wasn't available, and so she was off. She was off the list, and we started looking at a number of other actresses, some other really terrific top names of girls in that age range, girls with young actors with a lot of really terrific credits who are really terrific actresses. And we start to go down the path, auditioning, doing some callbacks, narrowing down our list. And then we got a phone call that McKenna had read the script and
Hmm.
really wanted to meet to talk about it. And again, we were surprised because we had thought that she wasn't available, but apparently this project that she was scheduled to do, I think it had fallen through, and she was available. And I met with her at a little coffee shop near my house. We had a terrific chat. I think we were there for forever. I think it was a 3 hour chat, but it went by in 5 minutes, and we just hit it off. And just I knew instinctively this is absolutely the right choice for for Spider. And the next day she had officially had the part.
Wow, that all the pieces land on perfectly together. And
They did, yes.
I know you had a couple of projects of directing and before Spider and Jesse. But one of the things that, the good old Hollywood saying is, never direct children and animals. And
Right,
and you
right.
managed to cultivate two young actresses in a drama nonetheless. What was your approach on with these children in your film?
Well, the approach, to be honest with you, it needs to evolve because you have to get on it's one thing, once you cast whomever, kids, adults, whomever, everybody has a different everybody comes to their art from a different point of view. Some right, some actors, just again, whether they're kids or adults, their preparation is quite different. The way they go about it is quite different. So my my philosophy as a director is to really give the actor space to create, to do their thing, to find their character, to find their moments, and to really more gently guide, as opposed to dictate, um, as as the collaboration begins. Particularly, my philosophy with minors, with kids, was also to just to not to give them too much, not to try to fill their heads with too much direction, too many things to think about, but just sort of let them be, in a sense. I didn't want the I didn't want either Spider or Jesse to have to be thinking too much. Let them just sort of be in the scene, and feel it, and play it, and I can gently give direction, as we're going through certain takes. But a less is more approach, was often the way to go.
Well, whatever your system is, it worked perfectly here.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, being a LA-based, director, writer yourself, and you did a lot of research in Ohio, I want to admire the farmhouse first, that the lovely farmhouse that you use as a production set. But where did you end up filming? Because it could be in Ohio, but then again, it could be just outside Los Angeles and Malibu or Santa Clarita. So tell us about your movie secret.
Well, the idea really was that it take place in an unnamed town, city. The idea again being that this could be your backyard. Now, the real or a train ride away if you lived in the city. The reality was we, for various reasons, ended up shooting in and around Tampa Bay, Florida.
Hmm.
So the topography of Florida is relatively identifiable. It's with the palm trees, the Spanish moss. So it to me when I realized when we decided that we would shoot in Tampa and outside Tampa, to me that sort of colored everything a bit southern because this again the Spanish moss and the palm trees and sort of that rural vibe, the farmland. It that to me is like okay. It seems to me like we could really be anywhere in the American South. So whether we're in Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina, doesn't matter. It could be any of those places. So we I just gently sort of nudged a southern infused it with some southern accents so it would feel grounded somewhere in the American South.
Hmm.
Um, that was simply just a function of the fact that we were shooting in Florida and it looks like the American South. Um, but knowing full well, the unfortunately this insidious epidemic of drug addiction is pervasive. It's everywhere. So whether we made the movie in Florida or in Oregon or in Kentucky, I would have adjusted uh, the dialect to fit that location, but it wouldn't, in a sense, it wouldn't affect the story in any way.
Well, you came up with a brilliant story. So, Dan, let me wrap it up with one last question. You know,
Sure.
you done so well, and audiences will have a chance to watch it here in Santa Barbara. But what's up next after this?
Oh well,
It's
there are
always a
there.
tough question, right?
Well, it's no, it's not a tough question. It's just a question I'm not sure I can answer because there are a few things in the works that haven't been announced yet, and so I just don't know if I'm able to talk about them. But what I can say specifically is I am doing a couple things. I'm pursuing the next writing directing project, which is I don't want to talk about the film specifically, but I will say one of the things that myself and uh, again my producing partner Dan Sema, who worked with me on Spider and Jessie, is we're interested in telling stories, social justice, social action, films that deal with causes that are socially relevant. So the next film that we want to do is squarely in that box, although a different subject matter, of course, than Spider and Jessie. Um, but I also, in addition to that, have a couple of projects that are not in that box that I'm doing as a screenwriter. I've been making my living as a screenwriter for years. So there are a couple of projects that I'm focused on there, but again, I can't really get into the details of those. And I'm also developing uh, a television show. But again, I apologize. I'm not. I can't divulge the specifics of those.
Well, we know how this business works, but for the moment, you have your film on Spider and Jesse, and that's what we talked about, and that's what everyone's going to
Yes.
enjoy. So, Dan, thank you very much for carrying this conversation, and do enjoy Santa Barbara, and I hope the rain over there lets up for you this weekend.
I hear it's supposed to let up by our premiere tomorrow, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Gig. But I really appreciate the time. Thank you for the terrific interview and the questions. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.